Hi everyone, my name is Sumbul Sameen and I hope you had wonderful holidays and a very happy new year. Today we are back again with another episode of this podcast with Syed Saptan Hussain, who is working as a senior manager Deloitte UK. And today the topic of our discussion is about cultural differences that the overseas people coming to the UK as an experienced professionals in the audit sector or the new hires they face us. So hi Saptan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Sumbul?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for asking, Saptan. So today I would like to ask a question about why do you think it is important for an organization and an experienced professional, specifically hired in the audit sector from overseas countries, to understand the cultural barriers between UK and other markets?
That's a very good question. So, but I think from an individual perspective, they came over to the UK for better professional career and settling down in the UK. So most of them wants to get promotions or career progression and at a fast pace. So understanding the cultural differences would help them navigate the challenge of getting earlier promotions, and also their immigration status or their stay in the UK is dependent upon their job. So it is important for them as well, to make themselves comfortable with the UK culture, because they have to spend around 5 to 6 years to get their settlement visas and to get the desired experience that they need. So that's from individual perspective, and from the organization perspective. If the people who are coming from overseas won't understand the cultural differences, they won't be able to perform their duties or their responsibilities in a better way. Normally, the audit firms have kind of these surveys that generally goes on a quarterly or annually basis, which ask about personal experience of people and the culture of the organization. So if people are not happy, those uh, surveys that differences or that problem will impact those surveys. People will show their discontent or discomfort navigating through the culture, and that will go into the KPIs of the high management. Plus, audit is a teamwork, and if an individual working within an audit team is not satisfied or is not comfortable with the culture of the organization, it would impact their efficiency. And if an audit goes wrong, that impact
Yeah.
the organizational reputation, because in audit firms or generally in the market, a reputation is the most important thing. So from an organization perspective as well, it's really important to make sure that people who are working with them are comfortable with the culture, and they know their expectations clearly, what they need to do, and what are the do's and don'ts of their responsibilities, and the way they execute their job on everyday basis. So that's why it's very important on an individual and organizational perspective, to help people to navigate through these cultural differences, and making sure that the expectations are clear on both sides.
Okay, great, wonderful. Yes, verily, it is. And Jitin, I would like to ask, you are working as a senior manager in Deloitte UK, and you were hired as an overseas experienced professional. So, can you tell us about what cultural differences you noticed, and how you think the organizations can help and support the overseas experienced hires and the newbies in eradicating those cultural differences?
That's another good question. Thank you, Sambal. From my perspective, I've noticed there are around 5 or 6 key differences that I've noticed when I moved from overseas to the UK. The first one is behavior versus action. So UK market is more behavior oriented rather than action oriented. In the Middle East or in Pakistan or India, it's more like, if you got your job done, that is the most important part. It doesn't matter how you behave
True.
during the course of that assignment. But in the UK, that is one of the most important part, in terms of your behavior, how many people are happy working with you, what client feel about you, what does the individuals at a junior level or a senior level feel about working with you, how many people have learned from your experience, and how
True.
you did as a team player. So the behavior you demonstrated during the course of your engagement is an important part of your job, and
Very
you need to be very much careful about the way you are behaving with different individuals who come across during that time. The second important thing is communication. So generally, the focus on communication is not great in the rest of the world as compared to UK. Like here the focus is much more on the communication, your written skills, the way you are speaking.
true.
Sometimes because English is not your first language, so sometimes you don't know the politeness of different words. You use words which seems to be a little bit more, uh, you know, harsh. Some people think they are harsh. For example, like some people use Mister or Mrs. or something like that, which is not the way they should be doing their communication. And when you're communicating to your subordinates or the people around you, you need to make sure that your communication is clear and concise. Some people speak English in a very fast way, because the countries that we are coming from, it seems like kind of an achievement if you are speaking English in a fast uh, way, like in a fast
But
word.
yeah,
So it's not like that's not kind of a requirement here, as long as your message is clear. Whether you're thinking, speaking to that to that
right,
person, that is still fine, but you need to make sure that your message is going across very clearly, and you need to learn, like what words you should be doing, what words you should be using, and what words you should not be using. uh,
true.
Also, like in Pakistan or Middle East, we generally don't do a lot of email communications. It's more like you're sitting with client, and you're
Yeah,
talking to them rather than sending them an email. Here the culture is slightly different, so you also need to focus on, like how to write a good email in a short span of time. Sometimes people take a lot of time writing general simple email. So acknowledging that is important, I think. And then I will try to cover what organization should do in navigating those things. I think uh, the people who are already working in the UK, who are local, need to acknowledge that the people who are coming from overseas are trained in a different environment, and having recognition or acknowledgement of those differences like this that I'm talking about help them
okay,
to to encourage those people in changing their behaviors, because it's most important part. Like if you want to teach a standard to someone, it might be like a day job you can teach, but in terms of changing the behaviors, it is much more complicated. For example, if you just
true.
want to change one of your bad habit, it takes you a lot of time just to avoid
Yes,
that behavior or that bad habit. So that acknowledgement is very important, and I think the local needs to play their part as well, to encourage those people to acknowledge those differences and try to help them navigating through that challenge. Now, the third difference that I feel is more about integration. Now,
okay,
when you're working in your home country or overseas, like this integration seems to be not to be an issue, like because you're working on that organization or in a work environment where everyone is from the same culture or background, more or less. But when you move to the UK, because you just represent 20 to 30% of the work culture, so you have to do something to integrate yourself with your teams, with the people you are working with. So I think
yes,
into that, from an individual perspective, you need to make sure that you are not just sitting with the people who came from your same background. You should also be talking and socializing with people who are not from your background. For example, if you came from Pakistan or
sure,
India, you should try to build up your network with, for example, with British people, with people who came from Africa, China, or rest of the world, and try to expand your network rather than just sitting with your own people, which is kind of very common thing. And there is nothing wrong about it. Like as in terms of your you feel more comfortable talking to or socializing with people who has the same cultural background, but that is fine. But you also need to make sure that you are not uh, avoiding those people who are not from your own background. Or maybe sometimes people in the office as well, I've seen, like people just sit on one desk of from the same community, and then joking and talking with each other in their own language. which is like not this cultural norm or a professional ethics in this part of the world. So, 4 or 5 other people who are sitting near to you would feel a little bit uncomfortable if you're talking in a different language. So just be mindful of your surroundings and the people that you are interacting with. Now, from an organization perspective, I think it's very important for them as well to arrange those social events which are not, uh, I would say, against or which are very different than the cultural norms of the people who came from overseas. For example, like drinking, people like the Muslim community particularly avoid going to in events where there is a lot of drinking or dancing or things.
Okay.
So there is no harm. Like, I think from an organization perspective, you have to divide your social activities and make them a little bit more inclusive. For example, like, if there's a social event, it's fine that you have alcohol, but from an organization perspective, it's also important that there would be like the normal unalcoholic drinks are available as well, so the people who came from different background can have those drinks. And also, like, for example, you can arrange those events other than, like, going to a club. For example, you can do a social event where people are going for a sporting event, like, kind of horse racing, car racing, or bowling or something like that, which is different and a little bit more inclusive than the culture. So that would also help those people, to socialize with other communities and making themselves a little bit more respective. And they'll try to become the part of the team. So it goes both ways, like as I said earlier as well. Like, cultural change wouldn't come one way. It has to be from both ways. Like, if a majority is not accommodating a minority, that efforts will go in vain. So it is important from both sides that people do acknowledge it and try to make sure that they are a little bit more inclusive in terms of the social events. Now,
True.
the fourth point is like office-wide contribution. So working in other than UK jurisdiction, it doesn't matter if you are. It doesn't matter much. Like, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter at all, but it doesn't matter much if you are not contributing in office-wide activities. Now, this part of the world, it is very important that you are doing something which is, for which is in addition to your normal day job. Now, what that could be like, for example, you can arrange social events, you can arrange trainings, you can be part of experience hire network, you can do something which other people can benefit as well, and that should be like in addition to
Amazing.
the
Yeah.
normal job responsibilities. Like, if you're an AM working in an audit, it's fine that
Yeah.
working on a client and delivering it, but you also need to think about your what other actions you can take for your contribution towards office wide activities. Because when the
True.
promotion discussions held, it is important that most of the people working in the office should know about you, not just 1 or 2 people that you work with, because they do work kind of cumulative or kind of combined decision making in terms of the promotion. So if people know about you, if you have talked to them, if they have a good perception about you, that would definitely help you in getting swift promotions. So, and also, like, in that regard, like, your character is more important than your designation. So people should know about
Yes.
the value of your character. For example, they should know that you are kind of a more uh,
Mm-hmm.
a person who wants to help others. For example, like,
Yeah.
one part of the team who is acknowledging the fact that his or her responsibilities is beyond the general job description. So that is also important.
True.
Now, fifth one is like delivery of a difficult message. Like, we who came from a Pakistani, Indian, or Chinese background generally do not are not good at communicating difficult messages. Now that goes towards, like, our upbringing as well. As a kid, we're not allowed to challenge our parents. Like, generally, we follow what our parents says, and that similarly, we are not allowed to say much. Regarding our governments or political system. It's more like, you just need to maintain a silence, even if you are disagreeing with system, with the policies, with people. I think you are trained to be quiet. Now, in this part of the world,
Yeah.
it is deemed like if you are silent, it means you are happy. So if you are
True.
uncomfortable about anything, any policy, any procedure, or behavior of any other individual, you should be communicating that message to the from to that message through appropriate channel, via
Yes.
appropriate communication. Is not like you should be harsh communicating those messages. You just need to be careful about the way you are communicating that message, what channel you have adopted. But it is very important that you should communicate that message to relevant people, and don't just sit silent. Now, from an
Yes.
organization perspective, like normally, in terms of the workload, because we generally don't have a habit of challenging the workload that is given to us. Like sometimes the overseas or experienced hires get more work than the local person. Reason being, they do not
True.
uh, raise their concern, and the people who are working here feel like because they're not saying anything, that means they have capacity to do that. So from an organization perspective as well, the
Hmm.
leader needs to be careful in terms of the workload and making sure, like, because of the nature of the overseas experience hires, they might not challenge it, but they will be overburdened, which will create issues in terms of their health and well-being, and also like that would impact their efficiency and delivery of their work. So that needs to be carefully thought about from an organization perspective. And as I said, from an individual perspective, if you think if you got the more workload than others, or if you are under pressure, you should be communicating that message through appropriate channel to the right individuals, and that is very important. Same goes for like feedbacks. Sometimes we have difficult working experience with our seniors or the people who are our subordinates, but we do not communicate that feedback to that person, and we seem to be
True.
more reluctant doing that. So do not do it. Again, as I said, be polite, but it is very important that you communicate that message. Lastly, like the country like Pakistan or India, we are kind of one of the most qualified individuals, in that world. For
Yes.
example, in Pakistan, there are around 11 or 12,000 members out of 240 million of population, right? So once you qualify, you get a little bit of arrogance, and then your behavior a little bit more assertive. You are not acknowledging the fact that the person sitting in front of you could be right as well. You consider yourself the rightest person, and that arrogance
Right.
silently
Correct.
become part of our behaviors or our communication. Now, from an individual perspective, you need to be careful. Like in this part of the world, politeness and making sure that inclusivity and taking
Yeah.
everyone's opinion is very important part of a job and the culture as well. Now, I'll give you an example.
True.
So it was like my first day when I joined an office here. I was sitting on a table, and then s- some new joiners came in, and then after some time, a person with an age group of around who was in 40s or 50s came in. He put the bag in, and he was going for the coffee. Now he
Okay.
asked every other person on the table whether they would like to have a tea, coffee, or or a water. They just say like, would you like to drink anything? And the people who just came in, said like, some of them need coffee, some of them need tea, and I was like a little bit hesitant because of the culture that I'm coming from. So I said like, I don't need anything, but the remaining people have told him what they need. So, and then even he asked, like, how much sugar you need in your tea, or whether you would like it with milk or without milk. And then he went, then he came back
Okay.
uh, with, the teas and coffee in a tray, and then he distributed it to everyone. Now, it was my first day. I didn't know that person, but later on, I realized he was the most senior partner in that office.
Oh.
Back
Okay.
in India or
Great.
Pakistan, we are not even allowed to talk to them in an open way or even
Yeah.
go and say hello to them.
True.
Now, in this world, you see, like, even a senior partner doesn't feel disrespect
Mm-hmm.
of getting a tea or coffee for the new joiner.
Yeah.
Now, this
Amazing.
event talks
Yeah.
a lot about the culture and work environment here. So,
So they have quite open culture and
yeah, bottom line is like, I think
India.
they respect individuals as a human being, regardless of their designation. Again, as I said earlier as well,
Yeah.
like the character or the humanity matters more than their designation or competence or the level that they are operating. And I think that is in line with
True.
a kind of a the best practices in the world, that you should be mindful of the people around you, and you should be respecting them. And I think that create a culture of inclusivity and respect for everyone. Like, there is no culture of having a set room for a partner. Like, those people sit with the
Mhm.
team members in the firm, like on the same table, as I said, going for drinks, going for food and things like that. They are communicating, they're joking with each other. So that is a tremendous cultural difference that we need to be mindful, and we need to be
Following it. Yeah.
following it. Reason again, as I said, like, it's very important from an individual perspective, from an organization perspective, to mindful of those differences and trying to help each other navigating through that challenge. Like, someone coming from overseas, for them it's kind of altogether a different culture. They might have gone through, like, for some people it's kind of a cultural shock, because they're not very used to of different cultures, particularly when they came at a very later stage of their career. So helping each other and acknowledging those differences, uh, set out the clear expectations, like from individual perspective and from an organization perspective, like what
Yes.
to do
Agree.
to create a kind of a more inclusive, more effective, more efficient work environment.
True. True. Amazing, amazing, Saptan, and quite wonderful and brief insights. And those could really help out the professionals out there listening. And amazing. Is there anything else you would like to add in the conversation?
No,
You
it's,
feel could be important?
not that I can think of at this point of time, but I would really encourage and appreciate if you guys can give us some feedback in relation to the way we did in this video, or if there are any other topic that we need to cover. I would like to add, like, that communication again is an important part. So be communicative of people. Try to appreciate. One more thing I would like to add on this is, like, two words that are very frequently used in this part of the world, and that are not very frequently used, or that kind of, like, the people don't generally use it. Like, one is like thanks, another one is apologies. So whenever somebody has
Yeah.
good with you, just be kind and say thank you to them. I don't see that culture much in the culture that we are coming from. It's really good to appreciate those people, because that motivate them to do good. Second thing is like saying sorry. I don't know why people are too reluctant to accept their mistakes,
Yeah.
or kind of most of the time they are in a state of self-denial. I think these two words, apologies and thanks, I've seen a lot in all the communication, in verbal and written communications that I go through every single day. So try to adopt those two words. These are kind of very
Yeah.
inspirational, or kind of a magical words that sets your tone as well, to select what kind of person you are, and it has a wider implications on the people that are around. So on that note, I would like to thank you for your time and for
Yeah.
arranging the sessions, and I wish you a good weekend ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I just would like to add in, like, I read about Ronald Reagan, and he said that there are no constraints on human mind, and no walls around human spirit, and no barriers around human progress until and unless those that we erect on ourselves. So that was obviously about the cultural differences that we impose on ourselves. So quite a brief talk and things that you have discussed. Thank you very much, Saptan. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.